Absolute Martian Manhunter is a story about partnerships, ideas, and the uncomfortable truths we prefer to ignore. After surviving a terror attack, FBI agent John Jones was visited by an interdimensional entity known as the Martian, who proposed a partnership. Bound together in a shared consciousness, they can see thoughts as drifting plumes of colour and smoke, and together they uncover a rising tide of violence, hatred, and radicalisation across America. The orchestrator of this attack on decency was seeded and amplified by the White Martian, a dark side-aligned force. In Middleton, this threat came to a head. The town briefly experienced a psychic awakening, a moment of near enlightenment where people truly saw one another, their fears, their longings, and their loves. But almost immediately they rejected it, retreating to normalcy. Clouds of red, black and white gathered around their eyes, a visual sign of psychic pollution born from deliberate denial. This is a theme that echoes throughout Jones's personal life and his fractured family. His wife Bridget felt unsafe around him, unable to reconcile the alien presence inside his mind, and suspecting that he was suffering from severe mental illness, told him to leave. To make matters worse, his son Tyler now hosts the White Martian, a vivid reminder that bad ideas persist and take root even inside of children. And looming over all of this is a shadowy agency, pumping out misinformation and conspiracy theories, trying to keep a lid on the truth about reality. As Jones struggles with despair and self-medication, the Martian steps out, confronting danger and enforcing justice, but is captured by the agency, whose agents wield ideological bullets capable of harming a mind like the Martian's. Meanwhile, the cracks in reality grow, mirroring Jones' own isolation and failure to reach his family. Tyler sculpts strange, monstrous forms in his bedroom, and these act as a physical manifestation of the White Martian's influence. And at the end of the last issue, Jones encountered a new entity who calls himself his new partner, Despair the Zero, likely an interdimensional offshoot akin to the Martian. Despair the Zero claims Jones as his own, striking at the moment when Jones is at his most vulnerable. Without the Martian to clear the bad ideas from his mind, he is trapped with the worst one of all, despair. And that is where this issue picks up, with Jones continuing about his business accompanied by Despair the Zero. He notes that he hasn't seen the Martian in days and is trying to find him, checking in with people who unknowingly had lost contact with him, the woman who dreamed of cheating on her husband, and the man who had 3 separate families. It's interesting that the Martian had tried to stop the breakup of other families, potentially because he was powerless to do anything about the Jones family's situation. But while Jones explores these dead ends, Despair the Zero follows him around, reminding him of the hopelessness of his situation. He frames himself as Jones's only true friend, the only person that'll be honest with him. But what he really represents is cynicism. He may dress it up as friendliness and like he's doing Jones a favour, but he's trying to break him down, and that is the White Martian's goal too. His final line of investigation is with a death row inmate, someone who killed an elderly woman, and 2 aging security guards in a robbery gone wrong. He has scripture tattooed on his hand, Luke 6:37, which is, "Do not judge and you will not be judged. Do not condemn and you will not be condemned. Forgive and you will be forgiven." Very fitting. Meanwhile, at the agency's secretive base, things aren't looking good for the Martian. The group decides that they're going to vivisect him to see how he works. As they make their cuts, we can see multicoloured ideas springing forth from him, presumably good ideas, and in a particularly effective piece of imagery, beautiful butterflies spring forth from him, only to be burned with a flamethrower by one of the agents. Very subtle commentary, I think you'll agree. Back with Agent Jones, and he is late for a family therapy session with Dr. Trapp, although it turns out that things are not quite what they seem to be. Throughout the issue, we're shown panels of Tyler playing the game Operation, but the figure on the operating table alternates between the Martian and Jones. Where the Martian, a more abstract entity, is being torn apart physically, Jones, a physical person, is being pulled apart mentally. As if the doctor's name didn't give it away, this session is a trap. Bridget has staged an intervention, saying that she's worried about Jones's mental health. Despite everything she had seen during the endless night, she believes that Jones is having a schizophrenic episode. And you know what? Maybe he is, as a result of Despair the Zero's influence. What follows is a highly surreal psychedelic scene where Jones starts to feel the influence of Despair the Zero and the White Martian at the same time. There's also a hint as to why so many of Jones's colleagues at the FBI have treated him with disdain. It is suggested that his transfer to Middleton was not entirely his own decision, as a flashback, tainted by Despair the Zero, let's not forget, suggests that he had been accused of misconduct, including taking a bribe, and was reassigned designed as a form of punishment. He doesn't succumb, but you can see how at times he merges with Despair the Zero, while at others he's just the little voice on his shoulder telling him all his fears are coming true. At the same time, he can see that Bridget appears to be under the influence of the White Martian, and the staff, including Dr. Trap, are his minions. And when John goes to find Tyler, it's revealed to him that Tyler is the host of the White Martian because he has the bad idea fog blasting out from his eyes. Bridget says that he's doing better than ever. He's no longer mute, he speaks to her all the time now. It's just in her head. And it's funny that with all this talk from Bridget about hearing voices in her head, Dr. Trap and the nurses decide now is the time to bring Jones in. As he flees, Jones finds himself back at the office speaking to his boss, and it all feels very dreamlike, where the dialogue and imagery doesn't really make a lot of sense, although there is a persistent image and sound of cracking across his life at this time. At the same time, the agency's vivisection has uncovered a tether to the real world that they trace back to Jones. The issue ends with Jones in the clutches of despair in his motel room, Bridget breathing in the bad idea smoke, and the agency descending on Jones's motel room. I think if there was one word I would use to describe this issue, it would be disorienting. Scenes bleed into one another, faces shift, and so does the scenery. We're never entirely certain whether we're watching an external conspiracy tightening its grip, or just a mind under siege folding in on itself. The cracking sound follows Jones until even we begin to doubt what's structural and what is psychological. Is Bridget truly influenced? Is the agency everywhere? Is the White Martian orchestrating events, or is Despair the Zero reframing everything through the lens of cynicism? I don't think we can take anything we've seen literally, and what I think Deniz and Javier Rodríguez are trying to do is place us in Jones's shoes as his mind is under assault. Earlier issues treated Middleton's extremists with uncomfortable empathy. They were isolated, humiliated, and drifting. Nothing in their lives felt stable. They felt unheard, cut off, convinced that someone else was to blame for their suffering. The series went out of its way to show how a bad idea can take root in anyone that feels loneliness, confusion, and listens to narrative that makes pain feel purposeful. In this issue, the book places the hero in that exact emotional landscape. Jones is alone, his career is in question, his marriage is fractured, his son is lost to him. Reality itself feels unstable, and in that vacuum, Despair the Zero offers cruel, simple, seductive clarity. By placing us inside of Jones's fractured psyche, the comic isn't just telling us how radicalisation works, it's making us feel the conditions that allow it to happen. The fog, the isolation, the sense that nothing makes sense and someone must be to blame. The thing I've taken from this is that the thing that separates the hero from the villain is resilience, partnership, and the willingness to question the negative voice in your head that claims to be your only friend. And these cracks in Jones's life are widened as he is isolated from the Martian. The agency is closing in. Bridget is breathing in the smoke erupting from their corrupted son, and Jones sits in that motel room with despair tightening its grip. The question the series leaves us with isn't simply whether he can save the world, it's whether he can hold on to himself. Absolute Martian Manhunter 9 is available now from all good comic shops. I would encourage you to research your local comic shop, and if you don't have one, I'm certain there are dozens of good stores nearby that would be happy to mail you your comics. If you're opposed to the idea of cluttering up your home with comic books, then you can get this one digitally from places like Amazon as well as Neon Ishiban. Personally, I prefer physical comics, but I do like the convenience of having thousands of comic books accessible from my phone. But you do what works best for you. For those that are interested in my physical collection, this week I returned to the scene of the murder of my wallet and picked through Gosh Comics' last remaining vintage Batman comics from their recent event. I found a copy of Batman 66 from 1951, the infamous Joker's Comedy of Errors story. If you know, you know. Next week I'll release 3 videos. Up first, Absolute Superman number 17, where the Man of Steel and Hawkman must put aside their differences to protect Metropolis from the plague of the parasite. Following that, I'll be discussing Absolute Flash number 12, where Wally confronts the monstrous Eobard Thawne in the depths of Fort Fox. And finally, Batman number 7, where the Cape Crusader learns about Dr. Zella's star patient in room 10. Yeah, it's the Joker, but is it possible that he's been cured? We'll find out. Hope to see you then.